10 in the morning. Someone says something that cuts you. 5 seconds. That's how long it actually lasted. Now check the clock. 10:20. You're still replaying it. Noon, still there. 6 p.m. driving home, it's still in the car with you. Nobody stole your whole day, you gave it away. Here's what that actually looks like. You don't answer them out loud. But in your head, you keep answering them for the next 6 hours. You have the argument again. You rewrite what you should have said. You picture the look on their face when you finally say it right. You imagine what they were really thinking about you. You imagine what you'll say if it ever comes up again. And the person who started it, they probably forgot the whole thing by lunch. They went back to their desk or their phone or whatever they were doing before you crossed their mind for those 5 seconds. There was no dramatic aftermath on their side. No replaying, no rehearsing, just you. You're the only one still in the room. Here's the part people get wrong about this. It's not about becoming a person who doesn't feel anything. That's not the goal, and, honestly, that's not even possible. You're going to hear about Stoicism today and picture some cold guy who never gets angry, never raises his voice, never seems bothered by anything at all. Forget that image. Throw it out. That's not who you're about to meet in the next 10 minutes. The real goal is smaller than that. And harder. What happened can hurt you. That's real. Nobody's asking you to pretend otherwise, and nobody who's actually studied this philosophy is asking you to either. But the event and your reaction are two different things, even though they feel welded together in the moment. The event lasted 5 seconds. The reaction, the version that keeps running for hours after the moment ended, that part is optional. Most people never find out it was optional. They live their whole life assuming the replaying is automatic, like breathing, something that just happens to them instead of something they're doing. So here's what's coming. 10 lessons. Some of them ancient, pulled from men who were teaching this in the middle of plagues and exile and empire. Some of them you can use in the next 5 minutes, before this video even ends. One of them is going to show you exactly why certain people can trigger you in seconds, while other people barely register, even when they say something worse. Another one is going to show you the difference between silence that's weak and silence that's strong, because they look identical from the outside and almost nobody can tell them apart in themselves. And one lesson, Lesson 8, is going to hand you an actual technique, 3 seconds long. You can use it today, the next time someone says something that makes your jaw tighten. We'll get there. By the end you won't feel less. You'll still feel everything, probably just as intensely as you do now. You'll just stop obeying it automatically. Let's start with the toll nobody tells you about. One more thing before we start. You don't need a dramatic story for any of this to apply to you. Most of what wrecks people's peace isn't a huge betrayal or a public humiliation. It's small. A short reply from someone you love. A look you couldn't quite read. A comment in a group chat that probably meant nothing and somehow took over your whole afternoon. If your mind went straight to something small just now instead of something big, that's normal. That's actually most of what this video is about. Someone insults you at work. 10 seconds. That's the whole event. 10 seconds of someone else's mouth moving, and then it's over. Then you replay it at your desk. You replay it in the car. You replay it while you're supposed to be watching a movie with your family. Except you're not really watching it, you're just staring at the screen while the scene runs again in your head. You replay it lying in bed at 11 p.m., building the comeback you should have said, the perfect line, the one that would have shut it down completely. You didn't say it in the moment, so now you're saying it to the ceiling. You know this scene too. Someone makes a comment about you in a meeting. Everyone laughs a little. You smile because what else are you going to do in front of the whole room? You say nothing. 10 minutes later you're thinking, I should have said something. Then, why did I let them talk to me like that? Then, next time I'll have something ready. By the time the meeting ends, you've had the argument 4 different times and it only actually happened once. Here's the uncomfortable math. The person gave you 10 seconds. You gave the moment 6 hours. They didn't steal your evening. You handed it over, piece by piece, without ever noticing there was a choice at any point along the way. Epictetus taught this to former slaves and soldiers 2,000 years ago, in a school where nobody in the room had much control over their own circumstances. It is not the event that disturbs us. It's the judgment we attach to it. Same insult. Same room. One person forgets it by lunch. Another person is still awake with it at midnight. The words didn't change. What each person decided the words meant did. Try this the next time your jaw tightens. Don't ask why did they do this to me. Ask what did I just decide this means about me. That question alone moves the whole event back into your hands, because now you're not investigating them anymore. You're investigating yourself, and that's the only place you actually have any power to begin with. This isn't about finding the perfect answer in the moment. Sometimes you'll ask that question and still be angry 2 minutes later, and that's fine. The point isn't to switch off the emotion instantly like a light. The point is that you've now separated 2 things that used to feel like one thing. The event, which is over, and your judgment about it, which is still yours to work with. Once they're separated, even slightly, you have somewhere to stand that isn't just inside the reaction. Watch 2 people get interrupted in the same meeting. One shrugs it off before the sentence is even finished, barely registers it, moves on to the next thought like nothing happened. The other is still thinking about it that night, replaying the exact tone the interruption came in, wondering if it meant something. Same interruption, same room, completely different reaction. So why? The trigger is external. The wiring underneath it is not. Something in that second person's history made being interrupted means something bigger than it actually is right now. Maybe it means you don't matter. Maybe it means you're being dismissed. Maybe it goes all the way back to a childhood dinner table where nobody let them finish a sentence either. Whatever it means to them, it was decided a long time before this meeting, by someone much younger than they are today. And I want to be careful here. Not every trigger means you're carrying some deep wound. Sometimes the alarm is nothing more than pride. Sometimes it's wanting a little respect in the room. Sometimes it's just that you're exhausted and you had nothing left to absorb one more thing today. And the interruption just happened to be the last drop in an already full cup. You don't need to diagnose yourself. You don't need a therapist's vocabulary to notice this. You just need to notice. Why did this one thing affect me this much? For the Stoics, emotion was deeply tied to judgment. Our judgment helps build it. We don't just get struck by anger like we get struck by rain falling on us from outside. Something in us reacts to what happened, and then something in us decides what it means almost instantly, faster than we can catch it happening. Which means the size of your reaction is telling you something the event itself never could. A small event with a huge reaction is not really about the event. It's a signal pointing somewhere else. One of the reasons certain people can set you off in under a second, while other people can say worse things and barely register, is exactly this. It's not always about them. It's about which old alarm they happen to walk past on their way to saying whatever they said. Think about the people who never manage to get under your skin, no matter what they say. It's usually not because they're gentler with their words. Sometimes they're blunt, even careless. But something about how you see them, or how little power you've handed them, means their words just don't land the same way. That's worth sitting with. It means the wiring can change. It's not fixed to the words themselves. It's fixed to what those words are allowed to mean to you. Quick question. Who's the last person who irritated you before they even said a full sentence to you? You already know who I mean. The name came to you before I even finished asking. Now the harder one. Why them specifically? Sometimes the answer is simple, they're genuinely difficult. That's allowed. Not everyone who irritates you is secretly teaching you something about yourself. Don't let anyone talk you into blaming yourself for someone else's bad behavior, because that's not what this lesson is asking you to do. But sometimes, the size of your irritation is bigger than the offense. And that gap is worth looking at honestly, without turning it into self-punishment. You call someone arrogant. Where have you mistaken your own confidence for superiority and quietly let yourself off the hook for it? You call someone selfish. Where have you protected your own interest and called it being realistic? You call someone fake. Where have you smiled at someone you couldn't stand for reasons that felt completely justified at the time? Here's the actual rule. Sometimes the problem is them. Sometimes your reaction is showing you something about you. The work is knowing which one you're looking at, instead of assuming it's always the other person, which is the easier story but not always the true one. You do not have to attend every argument you're invited to. Say that back to yourself. It matters. You know the kind of message. You read it once, then again. Your chest gets hot. You start typing, you delete it. You type another one, this time sharper. You add one more line, because you want them to understand exactly how angry you are. And somewhere in there you realize you're not even responding to what they actually said anymore. You're responding to your own imagination about what they meant by it, the version you built in your head that's angrier and more deliberate than anything they actually wrote. Then you delete the whole thing. Not because you lost. Because you realized answering was only going to build a bigger fire out of a small one, and you'd rather keep your evening than win a point nobody's going to remember by next week. There are two kinds of silence, and they look identical from the outside. One says, I don't know what to say. The other says, I know exactly what I could say, and I'm choosing not to. Only you know which one you're standing in, and honestly, sometimes it takes you a minute to figure out which one it is yourself. Before you respond to anything that stings, ask one question. Does responding actually help this situation? Or am I just trying to relieve the discomfort of being challenged? Sometimes it's the second one. And once you see that clearly, The chair stays empty and nobody gets to pull you into it, no matter how many times they knock. There's a version of this at home too, not just in messages. Someone says something at dinner that lands wrong. You feel the urge to correct them right there, in front of everyone, to make sure your side of it is on the record. Sometimes that's necessary. But sometimes the better move is to let the comment sit, finish the meal, and bring it up later, privately, when you're not performing for an audience and they're not defending themselves in front of one either. The empty chair isn't about avoiding every hard conversation. It's about choosing the argument on your own terms instead of the ones you were handed in the heat of it. Some people handle pain by going numb. I don't care anymore, they say. Nothing gets to me anymore. They say it like it's a victory. That's not peace. That's armor. And if you need armor to get through an ordinary conversation, the wound underneath it is still running the whole show, just quietly, from somewhere you've stopped looking. There's a difference between numbness and steadiness. Numbness says stop feeling so nothing can reach you. Steadiness says feel it completely and still remain who you are on the other side of it. And steadiness doesn't always look calm from the outside. Sometimes it means you say out loud, "That hurt." Sometimes it means you walk away from a conversation instead of finishing it. Sometimes it means you set a boundary you've never set before, one you've been avoiding for years because you were worried about how it would land. Sometimes it means you cry and you let yourself, right there, without apologizing for it. And sometimes it means you say nothing at all, because you know anything you say right now is going to come from anger and not from you. This matters because people hear the word Stoic and think it means put up with anything. Say nothing, absorb it and move on over and over, no matter how many times it happens. That's not it. Setting a boundary is not the opposite of Stoic calm. It can be the exact expression of it. Telling someone that what they did was not okay, and telling them clearly without yelling, without needing them to agree with you or apologize, that's not losing your composure. That's using it for something real. There's an old distinction worth remembering here. Some things are within your control. Your judgment, your effort, your choices, your response. Other things are not. Other people's opinions, their behavior, whether they apologize, whether they even understand what they did. Peace comes from getting clear on which side of that line you're standing on in this exact moment and putting your energy only on your side of it, instead of spending it all trying to manage something that was never yours to manage. Marcus Aurelius wrote his private notes surrounded by plague, war, and betrayal from men he trusted with an empire. He never once wrote, "How do I stop feeling this?" He asked, "What kind of man will I be in response to this?" That's the whole difference. Pain is information. It tells you something happened. It does not get to tell you who you become because of it. Think of pain the way you'd think of a smoke alarm. Nobody rips a smoke alarm off the wall because it's annoying. It's telling you something worth knowing. But you also don't spend the rest of the night standing there listening to it scream. You use the information. You act if there's something to act on, and then you let the alarm stop being the center of the room. That's the whole posture this lesson is asking you to practice. Picture this. Someone rejects you, doesn't like you, says you're not good enough, or implies it, which is somehow worse, because now you have to fill in the blanks yourself. And now, in your head, you're defending yourself. To a person who probably isn't even thinking about you anymore. You're building a whole case. Evidence, counter-arguments, a closing statement nobody asked for and nobody's ever going to hear. Or here's a smaller version of the same thing. Someone doesn't invite you to something. You spend the whole evening building explanations for why. 10 different theories by bedtime, each one worse than the last. You never once just ask them. That's the courtroom. Your mind builds a case and calls its own evidence without ever calling a single witness who could actually tell you the truth. Most people never notice they're living in that courtroom. They become the prosecutor. Your imagination becomes the jury. And you let one opinion from one person on one ordinary day write the verdict on your entire life. Who appointed them judge? An opinion is not a verdict. Rejection is not proof. The Stoics didn't spend their energy trying to control the courtroom outside them because they knew they never could. They built a stronger bench inside instead. Did I act with integrity? Did I do what I believed was right, given what I knew at the time? If yes, someone else's verdict can stay exactly where it belongs. With them. You go to bed angry at someone. You wake up. They're already on your mind before your coffee is even made, before your feet have even hit the floor. You check their last message again. You wonder if you should send another one. You replay what they said and start building explanations for behavior you can't actually control, no matter how many theories you come up with. You imagine what they meant by that one sentence they probably typed in 10 seconds without thinking twice, while you've now spent 20 minutes dissecting it. And here's the strange part. None of this changes what actually happened. It only changes how long you keep suffering from it. The event stays exactly the same size. Your suffering keeps growing. That's not your weather. That's theirs. You just agreed to carry it, without ever really deciding to. You are responsible for how you treat people. Your promises, your choices, your character. You are not responsible for making someone else understand you, or regret what they did, or become the person you needed them to be. That's a heavy thing to keep trying to carry. And it was never yours to begin with, no matter how much you love them or how badly you want it resolved. There's a version of this that shows up at work too. Someone's in a bad mood and snaps at you over nothing. You spend the rest of the day wondering what you did wrong, replaying the last few interactions you had with them, searching for the mistake. You didn't do anything. You just happened to be standing there when their weather rolled through. Their mood is not a message about you. Most of the time it's not about you at all. It's about whatever they're carrying that has nothing to do with the room you were both standing in. Ask yourself tonight, is this actually mine to carry? If the answer's no, you're allowed to put it down, even if you've been carrying it for years out of habit. There's a simple test that helps here. Ask whether the thing you're stressing about is inside your control or someone else's. Your reply is yours. Their reaction to your reply is theirs. Your effort at work is yours. Whether your boss notices it today is theirs. Once you sort a worry into one of those two piles, you'll often find you've been spending most of your energy on the second pile, the one that was never going to move no matter how hard you pushed on it. Remember I told you there was a technique. Here it is. Composure isn't something you'll find in the emergency. It's something you build in every small, boring moment before it. Traffic. A slow reply. A minor disrespect. A comment that wasn't really about you but felt like it was. These aren't distractions from your day. They're reps. Every single one of them is a small rehearsal for the big one that's eventually going to show up. Musonius Rufus, the teacher who shaped Epictetus, argued that philosophy had to show up in how you lived, not in what you could recite at a dinner party, in what you actually did the next time someone tested you, in the moment when it actually costs you something. So here's the behavior part. Next time you feel the trigger, do this. Notice your jaw. Notice your breath speeding up, your shoulders climbing toward your ears. Then let 3 full seconds pass before you do anything at all. Not 3 seconds of pretending to be calm, 3 seconds of actually just pausing. Here's why those 3 seconds actually matter. Your first impulse isn't always the thing you actually want to do. Your body reacts before your judgment even catches up to what's happening, and by the time your judgment arrives, your mouth has often already moved. The pause creates a small gap between the two. And inside that gap you get to choose. Maybe you still respond. Maybe you walk away instead. Maybe you set a boundary you've been avoiding. Maybe in those 3 seconds you realize you were about to say something you'd regret for a week, something you'd have to apologize for later. The goal was never silence for its own sake. The goal is choice. That's the whole difference between reacting and responding, and it's a difference that changes almost every relationship in your life once you actually start practicing it. It sounds too small to matter. It isn't. Those 3 seconds give you enough space to stop the old pattern before it takes over. Win that fight enough times in small moments, and it's already trained by the time a big one shows up, the way an athlete's body already knows what to do because of 1,000 small reps nobody was watching. Here's a way to actually practice this outside of the moment it's needed most. Pick one small irritation you already know is coming today. A red light, a slow line at the coffee shop, someone cutting you off in traffic. When it happens, don't try to feel nothing. Just count. 1, 2, 3, then respond however you actually want to. You're not trying to win an emergency yet. You're just training the muscle on something small enough that it can't hurt you either way, so that when the real moment comes, the pause is already familiar instead of foreign. And give yourself permission to fail at this early on. The first few times, you'll count to 3 and still say the sharp thing anyway. That doesn't mean the pause didn't work. It means you're early in the training. Even noticing after the fact, realizing I skipped my 3 seconds there, is progress. You're building awareness before you're building perfect control, and awareness always comes first. Most people don't actually fear loss. They fear the moment reality proves that something they loved was never fully theirs to control in the first place. You plan something for months. It falls apart anyway. A relationship ends. A job doesn't work out the way you pictured it. Someone leaves who you thought was permanent. Someone you built years of plans around without ever saying it out loud. You built a picture of how the future was supposed to look, and reality quietly handed you a different one instead, without asking your permission first. People, relationships, money, your career, your reputation. When one of those gets taken away, it doesn't just feel like loss. It feels like a broken promise reality never actually made, even though, if you're honest, nothing ever guaranteed it would stay. The Stoic answer isn't don't care, it's care deeply without demanding certainty from life. Appreciate someone fully while they're here, instead of demanding life guarantee they stay forever. You can love something completely and still hold it with an open hand instead of a fist. And that open hand doesn't make the love any smaller. There's an old Stoic practice of picturing the ordinary things in your life as already borrowed. Not because you're supposed to expect the worst around every corner, but because it changes how you treat the people already in front of you today. You call them back. You say the thing you've been meaning to say. You stop assuming there will always be another chance. Because the assumption itself is what makes people careless with what actually matters to them the most. Ask yourself, if this disappeared tomorrow, what would still remain that nobody could ever take? Your judgment, your character, your ability to choose your response. That part was never on loan, and it never will be. This isn't a call to live braced for disaster. It's closer to the opposite. Once you stop demanding a guarantee from things that were never going to give you one, you actually get to enjoy them more, not less. The coffee tastes better when you're not busy dreading the moment the cup will be empty. The relationship feels warmer when you're not quietly auditing it for signs it might end. Holding something loosely doesn't mean holding it less. It just means your grip isn't the thing keeping it there. The goal was never to stop feeling. A person who feels nothing hasn't found peace. They've gone numb and called it strength, and eventually that numbness costs them more than the pain ever would have. You cannot control the sea. The waves come whether you approve or not, whether you're ready for them or not. What you control is whether you're the captain of the ship or a passenger getting thrown around the deck. Someone can still hurt you. Someone can still betray you. The difference now is what happens after. They caused a wave. They don't get to steer the rest of the voyage. Impossible to provoke doesn't mean impossible to hurt. It means someone can create a reaction in you without getting to decide what you do with it. That's the whole idea this video has been circling since the first 10 seconds, and now you have the language for it. Everything we covered today points to one place. An offense needs your judgment before it becomes pain. Anger usually points backward to something older than the moment that triggered it. Irritation can be a mirror if you're honest enough to look into it. Silence can be strength, not surrender. Pain is information, not a command you're obligated to follow. Nobody's opinion is a verdict unless you sign for it yourself. Some weight was never yours to carry. 3 seconds can retrain a lifetime of reacting. And nothing outside you ever came with a permanent guarantee, no matter how much it felt like one. So next time someone tries to take the wheel, pause, one breath. Ask the only question that actually matters. Who do I want to be in this exact moment? Not what do they deserve, not how do I win, just who do I want to be? You won't get this perfect. Nobody does, not even the men who wrote the philosophy you just heard pieces of. Marcus Aurelius was writing reminders to himself precisely because he kept failing at this too, over and over, in the middle of running an empire. The point was never to arrive at some finished version of yourself that never gets provoked again. The point is the returning. Losing your footing, noticing it, and coming back to the question. Again and again, for as long as it takes, which for most people is the rest of their life. If something in this hit close today, don't just scroll past it and forget it by tomorrow morning, back to replaying whatever's waiting for you the next time someone says something. Comment 3 words. I choose my response. If you mean it, leave those 3 words below. Not for me, for you. Because typing it is the first small rep of everything you just heard. The first 3 seconds you actually practiced on purpose. This channel exists for the next person wide awake at 2 in the morning, replaying something small, looking for the way back to themselves. If that's you sometimes, you're in the right place. Stick around. There's more of this coming. React to nothing. Remain yourself through everything.